Today on State of Mind, I'm actually a little nervous because I'm excited to interview Cassandra James because I want her to, I want to know all about her. She just got a big show on HBO Max called Sort of. Amazing. And let me just say this. She is the first transgender in history. Let me just say that again, because it's just, that doesn't happen very often in history. The first transgender in the history of soap operas. And she's on General Hospital, and she's here on State of Mind. That was good, right?
Hi. Good morning.
How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, man, this is cool.
Yeah.
I am excited because, you know, what I want on this State of Mind, I want you to lead me into, from the time you were small till now. We'll fast forward a lot because
Sure.
we'd be here 3 days.
Yeah.
Right? But just because I assume you've been through some tough moments. But maybe I shouldn't assume. Maybe you haven't. But I think you have. So let's get into it.
Okay.
Where are you from? How did it...
I was born here in California, in Pasadena, and my dad got a job that moved us to Canada when I was really young, like 4. So Canada's my Vancouver is my hometown. I grew up in Vancouver, and I ended up, we'll just do the geography. You know, I studied in Toronto, and then I moved back to LA, and I've been here for like 5 years now. So that's sort of the geographical journey. Yeah.
So when you were a kid, how was it? Did you have to go through a lot?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I was different, and I was smart, and I was like, you know, very effeminate my whole life. And, you know, so much of, because people do want to ask me about my journey and my story all the time. And I always say that, like, hindsight is 20/20, and I look back at my life and I really do see my closeted self kind of inside all the time. But it wasn't that way experiencing it and living it, if that makes sense. You know, I very comfortably identified with the gender I was assigned at birth, which is not unique for all trans folks, you know. But I went to an all-boys prep school, you know, and like I never fit in, and I was constantly battling myself and my environment. But I didn't really understand what transition or what transness could look like until much later in my life. And so when I talk about my journey now, I see her from the beginning.
Wow.
But it wasn't like that.
Now,
experiencing it.
This is fascinating to me. It really is. Your parents, how were they towards you?
You know, I'm really lucky. I will talk endlessly about the gratitude I have for my family.
Oh, they were fine. They were cool.
You know, I was allowed to express myself.
Amazing.
Authentically. You know, my favorite color when I was a kid was pink. You know, I played with Barbies and I had dolls, and you know, I was allowed to sort of gravitate towards clothes that excited me. And my mom sewed a lot, so she made a lot of clothes for me when I was really, really little. And you know, it was hard for my parents to watch their kid struggle. You know, I was in a lot of pain my whole childhood, for sure. But it was one of those things where, you know, my mom also has hindsight, right? She goes, oh, yeah, I mean, when you came out to me the second time, because I came out twice.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. You know,
How old were you when you came out the first time?
You know, I came out as gay when I was 15. Wow. And then when I came out the second time as my authentic self, you know, as who I am now, my mom was like, I mean, yeah, you were never really gay, like, because you never really, it was like an identity thing that just, she knew it wasn't really the final destination, you know. It was something that, you know, because I have gay friends, and I still, you know, that whole period of my life, I was surrounded by the gay community. And, you know, my mom always watched me sort of, I never fit in there either. Wow. Because I wasn't gay, you know, I'm a trans woman. And so it was fascinating for all of us. And we have been on a gender journey together, you know. And my dad's amazing. When I came out to my dad, he said, oh, I always wanted a daughter anyways.
Wow.
And that was it.
That brings tears to my eyes.
It was that simple, you know.
Wow.
I actually have a really amazing story.
Tell me. First of all, I want to say that I am just here to listen, because you could interview me, seriously. You were so composed, and I'm being moved by this a lot.
I'm half Chinese. My grandmother is very traditional. She was born in Shanghai and emigrated to the States. And my mom was born in Hong Kong, and then she went to Beverly Hills High. So, you know, they came to California when my mom was like a teenager. But there's a lot of sort of traditional Chinese values in our family. So when my mom and dad were family planning and they were ready to have a kid, my grandmother, this is the story. I don't know if it's completely true, but this is the story, and I'm sticking with it because it's beautiful.
Yes.
And my grandmother said, well, do you want to have a boy or a girl? Because in Chinese medicine and in Chinese, you know, in culture, there's like things you can do, you know, medicines you can take, or like there's like the time that you conceive, and all of these kinds of traditions that my grandmother's familiar with. And so my mom sat down with my dad, and they both decided, I think we want to have a boy. So, you know, whatever happened, you know, the tea was drank or whatever.
Right.
And my dad was living in, I believe he was living in Sweden getting his PhD at the time. And he called my mom. My mom's pregnant now. And he called my mom. He said, I think maybe like I'd rather have a daughter. And my mom like hung up the phone. She's like, it's too late, you know, click. It wasn't too late. And you know, I'm a very spiritual person,
yes,
and I don't know if there's anything to back this up, but for me, it might have been too late genetically to change things, but the universe answered and said, okay, we'll give you a daughter. Wow. And so, yeah, I was born in the wrong body, but my parents got a daughter after all.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. You know, my parents, being Hispanic, I don't know, but they probably, especially my dad, I love my dad so much, he would have probably had a hard time with it. That's that culture, right?
Yeah.
But there's a picture of me at about a year old with a dress on.
Yeah.
And and when I was little, everybody thought I was a little girl because of my dimples and stuff. I don't have it right now because of the beard. But I remember going, but see, it now growing up as you are now, like it's so much easier than it was 30 years ago. Am I right?
Yes and no.
Oh,
you know,
really?
I mean, we have a long way to go. It's
Oh.
for me, I'm so alarmed constantly. You know, most people have never met a trans person that they know of. That's alarming, you know, to be who I am. You know, one of my bumper stickers is, you know, the last time I checked, I'm trans all day, every day, you know? And so everyone in my life is familiar with who I am by proximity.
Yes.
But I realize that that's not the case for most people. Most people have never interacted. Have you ever interacted with a trans person that you know of?
Yeah, you.
Right, you know? And this is probably the most time we've spent together.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's fascinating to me. And so when I think about being an actor and you know, having a career that's going to grow, you know, it comes to me with like I have a great sense of responsibility because, you know, I am reminded consistently that the world still has no idea who we are. Wow. And what we're about and what we have to offer, you know? So
now, does Caitlyn Jenner help?
The trans community is very conflicted about her.
Ah, that's what I thought.
You know, I can only speak to my personal experience, of course, and like my own politics and understanding. You know, I can say that she helped me see a part of myself that I wasn't really acknowledging.
Okay.
You know, that cover was revolutionary, and it was, you know, she for so many trans folks of a certain generation, you know, here's the thing, we've always been here. Mm-hmm. We've always been here. Trans people are so integrated into the fabric of every culture. We've always existed. Mm-hmm. But for us, and for me in particular, you know, that was a moment.
Yes.
Seeing that magazine and seeing her on the cover, you know, and like it was like a mirroring that I didn't even know I had been craving.
Yeah.
However,
okay,
she doesn't really in my opinion,
yes,
she doesn't really represent the community.
Okay.
You know, because her transition has been rife with like an incredible amount of privilege. You know, she's white.
I get you.
She's part of one of the richest families in America. She's famous.
I get you.
So when she was ready to come out, Annie Leibovitz photographs her for the cover of Vanity Fair. It's not like that.
Right.
That is the exception to the rule. You know what I mean? The trans experience is still, you know, Black trans women are still in jeopardy. The trans community is still in jeopardy. And I feel like her visibility didn't really reconcile with that and didn't really acknowledge what the reality is for most trans folks. And so in that way, I think that people, myself included, you know, are critical of her and her journey.
I compare it kind of like mental illness, where there's a lot more awareness now than there was. Mm-hmm. But when I see, I can't name a name, but when I see a big celebrity coming out that they're mentally ill, and they still sound crazy, mm-hmm. it doesn't represent very well. Somebody like me, I've been through hell, but I'm now, you know, my life's great, and you know, you don't look at me like I have anything, and that's.
And it helps to have.
Why don't you be like the? You get me?
You know, I look forward to representing the community.
Yes.
Through my career and through my work, but I often have to sort of remind myself and other people that I can only speak to my own experience. And I always want to do right by the community, but it's also not my job to speak it's not appropriate for me to speak to the Black trans experience.
I get you.
My job as my platform grows will be to be like this.
Yes, I get you.
You should meet her.
Yes.
Why don't you talk to her instead? you know, or let's have a conversation together. You know, there are these kinds of folks in our community that people should meet and should be interacting with. You know, I hope I will be able to do that.
Oh, you're gonna do it. I know it.
Yeah.
Because I can tell.
Because otherwise, it's like, it's too much pressure. It's like a lot of pressure, you know, because it's impossible. I don't represent the community, but I know that for a lot of people I do. Because again, I'm often the only trans person that people are interacting with or seeing.
Yes.
So then I start to become the definition. And it's very important for me to also acknowledge and reconcile with my own privileges.
Yes.
You know, my family has been incredibly supportive. You know, I was able to medically transition in the way that I wanted to. You know, that is not...
How was that, the transition? Was that harder than you thought? Didn't even think about it, or you just did it?
You know, I mean, it's important to acknowledge that the cisgender world is obsessed with our bodies in a really scary and toxic way.
Yeah.
And I get it. I get it because our culture, we're obsessed with transformation. And if you look at the way drag culture has exploded on TV, it's because we love, psychologically, we love to categorize, right? And we like to measure. That's like how we are wired. And so when we look at trans folks, we can see often an A to B moment. And then it's like, it's tangible. And it's like, you know, the number one thing Googled about me is like what I look like before.
Wow.
You know, what my dead name is. You know, everybody is obsessed with this journey. And, you know, including asking us, you know, invasive questions about our bodies and the things that we've done. My response to that always is, I get it. I'd rather talk about the emotional journey, the spiritual journey, you know, because I'm not seeing people talk about it as much. And also it's like,
more interesting.
And also deeper and bigger and more valuable, you know? And also more difficult in a lot of ways.
So
you know?
Emotionally, how is it?
Well, there's this thing called the patriarchy that exists, right?
Yeah.
Which is like a systemic system that, you know, is rooted and empowered by misogyny, right?
Okay.
And trans women in particular fit into that system in a very scary and violent way. And for me, I was femme-shamed my whole life, right? Like I really dealt with a lot.
You were bullied, obviously, when you were young. Yeah. And,
you know,
and that's a pain, and that's horrible.
Of course.
And I get pissed off when I hear about it.
Yeah. But coming out as trans and like living authentically as myself, you inherit like this systemic misogyny overnight for a lot of us. Dang. Again, I can only speak to my own experience.
Yeah.
But you know, I am an actor who worked in restaurants, okay? And before I came out, I was the sassy gay waiter.
Okay.
And I got away with murder, let me tell you. You know, I didn't put up with anything from the customers, you know, and I was like the boss on my shift. You know, I was very much in control of my section always. I was that kind of server. When I came out and started living full time, nothing changed except for my name tag, which then signals people how to see me and perceive me. And the way that the customers interacted with me changed overnight. All of a sudden, I wasn't the sassy gay waiter. I was a bitch.
Oh,
I was a problem now, you know, because of these kinds of deeply rooted systemic problems around the way we see and value women. All of a sudden, and I have to acknowledge, you know, when I came out and started living full time, there's language that we use called passing, which means that if a trans person passes, it means that they can move through the world and be perceived as not trans, as cisgender.
Okay.
that's a privilege. It used to be rooted, and still often is rooted, in safety, right?
Yeah.
For trans folks, it was really important to pass because being visibly trans made them more of a target for violence. So I have to acknowledge that for the most part in my life and inside my transition, I've been really lucky to have access to passing privilege.
And why do you think that is?
I always talk about passing privilege as a combination of genetic privilege and class privilege. So there are certain things about me genetically that allowed me to be perceived, my framing, you know, the shape of my face, all kinds of things, right? And then there's also class privilege that allowed me to access the hormones that I needed to take to feminize my body and to make me feel more authentically like myself.
Yeah.
Which not everyone should, can, or wants to medically transition. And I always say a life in transition is not dictated by a medical transition at all.
Right.
Again, it's so much more than that, right?
Yes.
But it was so fascinating to me. I moved to LA and I was a hostess at a restaurant in Sunset Plaza, and I started hearing for the first time in my life, you should smile. You'd be so much more beautiful if you smiled.
I hate that.
And cisgender women, so not trans women, in my opinion, again, and not, I can't really speak to this as a trans woman, but my inkling is that a lot of cis women are indoctrinated into the patriarchy from birth. There's a lot of pressure and misogyny that sort of gets built into the fabric of almost every woman's identity from birth.
Right.
A lot of trans women don't have that experience. A lot of us were socialized male. A lot of us, you know, self-socialize, and we're out. There's a lot of outsiderness, like a lot of, you know, othering that happens to us in our lives when we're closeted. But what often happens, which was my experience, is when I came out and started living full time, the patriarchy went, boom, here's all this shit now that you have to reconcile with and manage and deal with. It's a very lonely experience because...
Any depression or any...
Of course. I've battled depression my whole life.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have anxiety, like, all the time, you know? I mean, I'm a very anxious person, and I've been, you know, in some form of talk therapy on off since I was 14.
Wow.
And I love my therapist.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
That's amazing, yeah.
And she's such an incredible support system and resource for me. But a lot of the work that we do, you know, is always kind of trying to reconcile with misogyny and trans misogyny that's very specific to the trans experience, because it colors everything and the way that I move through the world.
Now, I go back to your parents and where you would be now if they were not so accepting.
You know, I don't have the exact statistic, but they say something like a parent's acceptance dramatically reduces the risk of suicide in trans folks. Bitch. And it's true.
Yes.
It's true.
Yes.
Love and acceptance is paramount. So I don't know where I would be, because I was deeply unhappy and I felt really trapped. I felt really alone, you know, because like I said earlier, like I never fit in. I didn't really see myself reflected in media, right?
Yeah.
At that time, you know, there wasn't much, if any, positive representation of trans lives and trans folks in film and TV and in the media. And I certainly didn't have any empowered trans folks in my life. And that's a very isolating experience.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So, and I lost my best friend to suicide when we were 21, you know, in my 4th year of college. And that rocked me, you know? I talked to my then therapist, and he said something psychologically traumatic happens when you lose a peer when you're younger.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be introduced to death through the circle of life. That's how we're supposed to experience death. But when we don't, it can kind of like be jarring, and it can be traumatizing. I've done a lot of work to heal and you know, sort of relate to those demons in myself.
Yes.
As they sort of, as I connect to him, you know.
This is the one state of mind that I think I've talked less.
I love a good blab.
No, but you can only have a good blab if you have a good blab. If you didn't have a good blab, I'd interrupt you 7 times by now.
Yeah.
I want to transition.
Pun intended.
I want to transition to acting.
Okay.
And damn, how did you do it?
It's been
How
hard.
do you freaking do it?
It's been hard.
Acting is hard in itself. You
Yeah.
know, I can speak, you know, over 30 years in the business, done shit. It's hard to go into rooms and audition and be judged. And, you know, and can you imagine what you had to go through?
You know what? One of the
I will say this. I give General Hospital, Frank Valentini, a lot of credit for hiring you. But you're talented.
Thank you.
Because I watched you act. And if you weren't talented, I wouldn't have brought up that you're talented.
Great.
I would have just kept quiet, you know. So anyway, how was that thing, that whole...
You know, one of the most uncomfortable parts of navigating my career is that I'm almost always the only person like me in the room.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
You know, it's hard. It's hard, and it's hard to also because I'm also I'm the only Asian woman recurring on the show as well.
That's amazing.
So it's one of those things where we talk about that sense of responsibility, but it's something that I have to navigate like on my own almost all the time, you know, and there's, you know, we have certain needs and we have things that we're navigating as trans actors that I think the industry is still really not aware of.
Yeah.
You know, and so it becomes so much of my career, especially in this current chapter with the HBO Max show coming out and all of the kind of momentum I'm experiencing. I really had to build like my boss lady, like, you know, I had to really empower myself because I have to do a lot of self-advocating for myself, you know, and that I think is not, and again, I'll never know what it's like to be a cis actor in the world.
Yeah.
But my instinct tells me that it's not as I don't know. I don't want to. Well, I don't want to qualify.
You don't have to. I'm telling you, what you probably go is way more than what I've gone through in those rooms.
You know, just thinking about like dressing rooms and and restrooms and costume and makeup, and the way that all of that, you know, because a lot of trans folks, we have what is called gender dysphoria. And it manifests in really insidious, unique ways. And it's the ways in which the gender we were assigned at birth betrays us. And these are things, everything from, you know, my height to, you know, for a lot of trans folks, like body hair and things like that. Costuming, the way that the clothes that traditionally female clothes fits on our bodies is different a lot of times, and all of those things. And when we're feeling dysphoric, when that dysphoria gets triggered, it's debilitating a lot of times, you know. And I tell, you know, I'm really lucky, but I tell my support systems, there would be days where I wake up and I'm just feeling dysphoric, and I hate being trans, and I hate my body, and I don't feel beautiful, and I don't feel like myself, You know, I feel trapped by certain aspects of who I am. Yeah. You know, and I always say it's really irrational because I have a lot to be thankful for. I have a lot of gratitude and I practice it as much as possible. I'll say I've moved through my transition with a lot of privilege. Yeah. And I still battle my own dysphoria all the time.
To me, it's a lot like myself with mental health.
Because mental health is also a very isolating experience. Yes. Because we're not talking about it in the public consciousness in a way that's really healthy and
I am.
Yes, you are.
But it doesn't change the fact that
there's a lot of stigma still.
There's still stigma. It's better than it was, thank God. I think the pandemic helped that out. I keep saying that. But when I'm in a manic episode, when I'm in depression or when I'm in anxiety, it's isolating. And I say to myself, I don't want to fucking go through this anymore. Yeah. But guess what? You go through it and you get rewarded.
Yes.
And you're rewarded now. I'm rewarded now. And
it's such a cliche, but I always say the only way out is through.
Yeah.
And I will say I work very hard.
Sure.
You know, we do. We work hard. I say that the work I do in therapy, I'm in the trenches. That's what I say a lot. You know, really like grieving, unlearning, you know, processing, identifying constantly things, my triggers, things that are hurting me, relationships that aren't working, how to create boundaries, how to take better care of ourselves. You know, that's hard.
No, it's hard.
Because we're not talking about it. We're not teaching kids how to take care of themselves.
I hate the fact that there's no mental health classes with children.
I agree. I have so many educators in my family, and so I really, you know, I do believe that it does start there, and I think there's such a missed opportunity there to do a lot of healing for our future generations. I agree. Yeah.
All right, look, I'm going to conclude this by saying, because I could talk to her forever. I have been enlightened. I have been taught. It's exactly what I wanted in this interview. I didn't want to talk a lot in this interview, and I didn't. And I'm happy I didn't, because by listening, I learned.
That's a really beautiful gift you can give to someone like me. You know, I think we're just trying to be who we are and be in the world. And I think until you take that moment to maybe take that step back and listen, you know, we have a lot to offer, and the trans community will really surprise you, I think, you know?
Oh, I know.
Yeah. It's not you, but the
whole shebang.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been, like always, but this is a little more of a therapy session. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
It's been my honor.